It's both an honor and a responsibility to stand before you today, not only as the leader of the opposition in Parliament, but also as someone whose journey began in the very spaces that you occupy as journalists, the spaces where truth is pursued, questioned, and reported. I practiced journalism for 14 years, from 2006 till I took a decision to join the political space. But the journalist in me remains alive to date. And that's why in the work that I do, I tend to at times employ some investigative journalism and looking out for sources of information. And usually when I talk about something, it's because I've done my thorough research on it. When I say MPs were given 100 million shillings, you can scream, make noise, call it street talk, say Ssenyonyi is telling lies. But eventually the truth comes out, because by the time I say it, I know what I'm talking about. That's the journalist in me. When we're talking about issues here at Parliament, initially some said, this one is because he's opposition. Eventually the truth did come out. So the journalist in you never dies, even when you eventually leave the newsroom and go to wherever it is that you are. I'm happy to see some very familiar faces here. When I joined UBC back then, it had just metamorphosed from UTV. So when I joined in 2006, a number of you, I don't know where you were, I met people like Nalongo Rose Bukira, who I'm very happy to see. Please stand. And we appreciate you. She's one of those that taught me many things, together with Barry Francis, who was my editor, and over the years, she has remained steadfast in playing her role there. We do appreciate you. Today we gather to mark World Press Freedom Day, celebrated globally on the 3rd of May, which is tomorrow. This day is not just ceremonial, it is symbolic. It reminds us that press freedom is not just a privilege to be granted by those in power, but a right to be upheld, protected, and exercised by all in a democratic society. So I want to appreciate the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association for organizing this event and bringing us together to talk about these critical issues of concern. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy cannot exist in the dark. It demands scrutiny, transparency, and public participation. And the press is the torchbearer of that light, informing citizens, amplifying voices, holding leaders accountable, and exposing abuse of power. In Uganda, the media has played a vital role in every major political event, from election reporting to exposing corruption, to covering stories from forgotten communities and so on. Journalists have time and again been the conscience of our nation. The reality is, the media in Uganda is under siege, and we must confront this uncomfortable truth. The Kawempe North by-election is a recent bothersome example. Journalists covering that electoral process were subjected to abduction, beatings, harassment, arbitrary arrests, and violent intimidation. Equipment, such as cameras, were confiscated, access to polling stations was obstructed, and many were physically assaulted, including some in this room today. Their only crime is doing their job as journalists. Unfortunately, the Electoral Commission, and I'm happy my brother Julius is here, the Electoral Commission, which was in charge of this exercise, has up until now not showed the intention to see that the violators of this electoral process are called to order. I waited for a scathing statement from the Electoral Commission. I know that they did not deploy these people to beat up journalists and our candidate and other political actors, but I thought that the Electoral Commission, which is in charge, should have come out. And journalists, Julius being a journalist, maybe you should have come out a lot more. Otherwise, these people end up imagining that you are an accomplice. And like I'm saying, I don't think the Electoral Commission deployed those soldiers and the judge. You probably don't even know who these were. But I thought that as the person, the entity that was in charge of this exercise, your voice should have been unequivocal, so that it is clear to all and sundry. The military has for a long time brutalized the opposition in Uganda. The media has now been added onto that list of those who are brutalized. What is more disturbing is that the head of the army, Mr. Museveni's son, who should be calling out his officers for this mess, is always encouraging it, and even promising to promote those who brutalize citizens and journalists. We saw how he was tweeting during the Kawempe fiasco, saying this one has done a good job, this one has beaten well. What is his name? I want to promote him. We have seen how General Muhoozi Kainerugaba has gloated with excitement over this criminality. Yesterday, he was, as always, on social media celebrating the abduction and torture of one Edward Sebufu, better known as Eddie Mutwe, a supporter and a leader within the ranks of NUP. Muhoozi shared a picture of Eddie Mutwe stripped of his clothes and with visible wounds on his face. To date, Eddie Mutwe's family, colleagues, and even lawyers don't know his whereabouts. Many days after his abduction, the regime has time and again criticized Idi Amin Dada for such ills. But what is obtrusive is that they are doing even worse. We must all, as a citizen, put an end to this criminality. This is not an isolated case. Across the country, media practitioners have faced threats, unlawful detention, censorship, and attacks, often from state actors who should be protecting their rights as opposed to violating them. The Uganda Communications Commission, UCC, on several occasions has issued directives that lean more towards gagging other than regulating these media houses. You've seen how some media houses have been shut down for hosting opposition voices or airing uncomfortable truths. This has happened over the years, even when I was still a practicing journalist. Reporters have been forced to self-censor for fear of losing their jobs or their freedom. Because beyond the job, this person knows I could be abducted for simply telling the truth. The economic survival of media houses is under pressure. Many outlets are financially vulnerable, and this opens the door to political manipulation, editorial interference, and the erosion of independent journalism. We are witnessing a shift where digital media and citizen journalism is transforming this landscape. Young people armed with smartphones and a passion for truth are telling stories that once went unheard. The traditional gatekeepers no longer hold all the power, and that opens the space for new and alternative narratives. And I'm glad most of you media houses are morphing with the time, because journalism in 2006, when I joined the media, is not the same journalism of 2025. It's not. We're also seeing a growing public hunger for independent, investigative journalism. I thank people like Solomon Selwanja who are digging in their heels in that regard. Ugandans are asking hard questions. They want facts, not spin. And this demand gives honest journalism the relevance and urgency that it deserves. We appreciate everyone who continues to speak out in defense of journalism and all who are involved in the quest for a free press. Civil society has also stepped up, building networks, providing legal aid and training journalists in ethics, safety, and resilience. Their work is helping to protect not only the media, but the democratic space in which we all operate. So yes, there are rays of light, but it is our job, all of us, to nurture that light, to push back the darkness, and to ensure that the media freedom in this country is not just a slogan, but a reality that gets to be lived. As members of Parliament, we have a unique opportunity and a duty to push for the protection of press freedom. And I'm glad colleagues have talked about it, including, colleagues in the NRM, because this should be a bipartisan kind of situation. So we have that duty to make sure that there is press freedom, to make sure that there is recognition of journalists as essential workers in our democracy. That's why I was bothered by the way journalists were treated during the passage of the infamous coffee bill. Journalists were sent out of their space during plenary, you, journalists, not any others, and detained here in this conference hall. You were put under arrest without being allowed to even leave and either return to your homes or to your media houses, you were held here for hours. Of course, this was because of what was to happen next. Lights were switched off during plenary, and security operatives descended on MPs, wreaking untold havoc. I reminded the presiding officer, and I still do. I'd expected to find the deputy speaker here, but I'm sure they are watching. So at the time, I reminded the presiding officer, and I still do, remind them of the duty to protect MPs and journalists too, who are part of our family here at Parliament. If what you're doing is right, then you have no reason to be afraid of the media, hence making them a target. To our colleagues in government, we urge you to protect the freedoms you once demanded when you were in opposition. These people were in opposition once. In fact, they were rebels. They were not civil like us. For us, we are civil opposition, we get microphones, we talk, quarrel, speak all the English and carry out oversight and so on. But for them, they picked up guns and went to the bush. We will not be like that. But they were in opposition once. Maybe not Honorable Tony Ayo. He probably was a young man. But people in government, you were in opposition at some point. So we urge you to protect the freedoms that you once demanded when you were in the opposition. To media owners, we implore you to treat journalists right and pay them what is fair. Some media houses poorly pay journalists, and even this poor pay sometimes takes months to come. This is unacceptable. These journalists generate revenue for your companies through their work. Please remunerate them adequately. I know your president was shy, so he pointed the guns elsewhere. He said, Parliament, help us, and so on. And we've got a part to play. We've got to raise our voices like I'm doing now. But media houses, let's get serious. Stop exploiting some of these young people. You send them to do a story, you've not given them transport. But the media houses, I don't know how many miles away, and you're sending them, whether it be to Parliament or wherever. What you want is a story. The fellow has no transport, has no lunch. They've not been paid for 3, 5, 6 months. And you expect a story. What's wrong with you? Some of you fear to clap because your supervisors are here. And I'm also told we are live. I've seen some bosses here. Mr. Ben Min, it's good to see you. He's one of the good bosses, I'm sure. But we need to deal with these matters. Really, really. To citizens, let us support the media. Question it, yes, but defend its right to exist and to tell the truth. And to the media, we ask you to keep holding us accountable, whether government or opposition. You must shine the light. Of course, do so with integrity, professionalism, and courage, because that is what earns you public trust and strengthens democracy. It's fragile yet vital freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, if we want a future where democracy thrives, we must defend the freedom of those who speak truth to power. Let us ensure that the press in Uganda is not silenced, sidelined, or shackled, but supported, protected, and respected. Because a free press is not the enemy of the state. It is the backbone of a just and democratic state. Let us walk that path together with courage, clarity, and conviction. And as we always say, journalism is not a crime. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.